Thank you. So I actually have a funny story to tell about how I met Niki too. So just to pay back. So I know that Viennese love their coffee and your coffee houses, and I'm quite impressed, by the way. So we decided to meet in Palo Alto on a street called South California Avenue. And I said, yeah, I would love to treat you for coffee. Well, I met him in front of a storefront that looks like an old theater. And you look inside, and it sells running shoes, running gear. It's called Zombie Runners. And it's called Zombie Runners because most of their customers are 100-mile runners, ultra runners. So I'm sure Niki looked at it and said, they're not going to sell coffee in there, are they? Well, I hope that he actually got a good coffee because it's actually known for serving the best latte on that street. So I thought it was pretty funny when I saw the look on his face about, you're going to have coffee inside a zombie running store? So that's my story about Niki. I am very, very honored and excited to be here with you today because this very special event brought me here to Vienna for the first time from Silicon Valley, and I get to spend this few days with all of you. I believe that each one of you are here today because I think you want to change your world and maybe even change the entire world. And I believe that inside each and every one of us is an idea that can change the world. And I think that you're here because you want to bring this idea to life. So you're probably wondering, did she just change the topic of her talk the last minute? Isn't she supposed to talk about developer relations, insights, and hackathons? Well, don't panic. You're in the right place. This is the right talk. I am going to talk about what developer relations and hackathons are and how they can help you bring your idea to life. So let's start with developer relations. So let's just make sure we all understand developer relations, believe it or not, is not a dating service for developers. And that is not a service that I brought with me, just to be clear. And to find the definition of developer relations, it's quite new. Wikipedia says that it's actually developer evangelism, or it's also sometimes known as platform evangelism. So to get a little bit more definition, I looked at some of the job ads for a developer relations manager online. So the first one you see here is actually an ad from Google. And they say that developer relations are responsible for helping developers build great applications. They answer technical questions, they write code samples, they build code libraries, and they create sample applications. And they are the advocates for the developers. They actually take what the developers say about the product back to their product teams. Another job ad says that developer relations is responsible for interacting with the development community. There's that word again, community. Managing outreach and organizing events. This person will work closely with development to build competent, helpful content, again for developers. And lastly, developer relations is a mixed role, and they will assist developers by giving them resources and a community. And the role's responsibilities include attracting, enabling, and enthusing developers. How many developers do we have here? Raise of hands. Wow. Wow, great, welcome. So why do you think companies are so interested in wooing developers? So according to a study by the International Data Corporation, they found that there are about 18.5 million developers globally today. That consists of about 11 million professional developers and 7.5 million hobbyist developers. Now, hobbyist developers are those developers that do not do coding or software development work during their day job. And this number is growing. So by 2019, Evans Data Corporation expects or is guessing or estimating that this number of 18 million, 18.5 million will actually grow to about 26 million developers. So if you're a part of this, if you're a developer, You should feel very, very proud that you're part of this huge global community. Now think about that. If you own a company and you want to attract developers, think about that power, how big that group is. Think about the brain power of that group and how much knowledge you can tap into if you gain access to that community. Developers have influence. They influence their employers, they influence their buying decisions, they influence what platforms to buy and build applications on. They also influence their fellow developers. Developers have high credibility among other developers. They listen to one another. I don't know if any of you have heard of Stack Overflow. This is an open source project online, and you can ask any technical questions online, and there are millions of developers on this platform that will answer your question immediately. Developers are also early adopters. They're very innovative. They're not afraid to try something new, and they get all excited about it. They become very passionate advocates and contributors. When they try a platform and it works for them, they will talk about it. They will blog, they will talk about it, they will post their project on GitHub, they will answer questions on Stack Overflow, they will post news on Hacker News. These are places that developers frequently spend their time on when they're online. And most importantly, if you're a company, these developers will tell you what works with your platform and what doesn't work for them. So that actually accelerates how you make your platform better and what kind of features to focus on and which ones to not even pay attention to. There are also other trends. There are trends like the maker movement, the rise of consumer electronics. How many here has played or heard of Raspberry Pis or Arduinos? You're all developers, actually. So, and trends around home products like an alarm system or a thermostat that now would send information to a utility company. So companies that are traditionally not considered tech are now vying for attention of the developers because they want to build this developer community around their products. Car companies, Volvo, Ford, Nissan, are doing a lot of these developer evangelism type activities so that they can get developers to work with their APIs and build the connected car community. So again, it's a very, very powerful community, and that's why companies are going to them. So how do companies engage with developers? And this is actually what's relevant with everybody here. Again, this is a new concept. A lot of big companies have a big marketing engine behind them, and today's marketers, and I'm not going to say everybody, they think that they can market to developers the same way they market to everybody else, which is not the case. Developers can smell marketing and can smell fluff very quickly. So, companies, if you have a platform, you need to do the following. First, you need to build a relevant platform or technology for the developers, meaning it needs to be able to solve their problem, and it needs to be very clear how much of the developer's time and resources will it take for them to actually use your platform. And it also works with costs. Developers have a lot of options now, and they know that. There are a lot of open source projects and options and platforms that they can use at no cost. So just think about that. Developers need useful resources. They need to be able to work on your platform and learn how to build an application in less than 30 minutes. Up and running, hello world, very quickly, and then they're hooked. They like to have mastery. They like to be able to walk through certain steps and learn exactly where they are and how they can become an expert on your platform. So they also need a forum. They need a forum where they can talk to other developers and talk to the technical experts in the company that has the knowledge of the platform to ask questions. If they get stuck and they don't get an answer, they can be resourceful, but up to a certain point, they will leave and they will find another platform to build their application on. So how-to videos are really cool, very short, very quick. Again, be active or have presence in places like GitHub for your projects, and at the same, because that's where you would post sample code snippets, and at the same time, be where they are. Like, Stack Overflow, where they go and ask questions. So again, resources for them to be able to move forward with what they're building. A marketplace. Developers like to make money. So give them the opportunity to do that. And you could just look at how Apple has done this with the iPhone, with the App Store, how easy it is to put up an app and actually buy the app, right? And now they have access to millions of customers in that company's ecosystem. Funding. Another very important resource that developers like to have. So if you're starting a company, of course, you want to have some seed funding. And there are a lot of different ways to get this now. I don't know if you've heard of Kickstarter or Indiegogo, all of these online places where you can launch a project and actually ask for funding from strangers. So there are a lot of interesting ways, creative ways to get funding nowadays. But there are also companies who have started things like the SAP Startup Focus Program, where they bring startups and they train them on how to use the platform, and they expose them to their customer ecosystem, and they also provide them with funding. So a startup program from beginning to end is something that is beginning to start or become popular in the Silicon Valley. So it's not just about the funding again. It comes with training, it comes with resources, and it comes with access to those customers. And lastly, companies, again, need to be where the developers are, and they also need to have physical presence. So events like conferences, meetups, and hackathons. And hackathons are really, really fun. So now I'm going to talk about hackathons. As I mentioned, hackathons is one of those activities that a lot of developers go to. And it has actually become very, very popular now. You can probably go to one every weekend if you want to, if you're in the Silicon Valley. Anybody here, have you gone to a hackathon? Cool. So, full disclosure, when I worked at SAP with Mario and Hester, we actually worked in the team that did hosted these hackathons for SAP customers, SAP employees. So we did a lot of these events, and they're pretty fun. So what is a hackathon? It's a physical event, and I would say it's a community event because it brings people who have similar goals together. A lot of these hackathons have a specific theme. It could either be a theme around social good, it could be a theme around a specific technology that people want you to learn and play with. And it's all about learning. So it draws a lot of very different audiences. A lot of times it draws developers, it draws UX designers, web developers, students, business experts. It brings a lot of very different people. So everybody's invited to attend a hackathon. It's not just limited to developers. I think Saul and Hester mentioned the power of diversity in teams. And what we've actually experienced is if there is a team, and you form teams at hackathons, that is very, very diverse, they usually come up with the best and the coolest ideas. So again, it's a community event with lots of different audiences, various ages. It can be educational. It could be for social good. And there's a time limit. It typically goes from 24 hours to 48 hours, and people bring their sleeping bags. And some of them actually last longer than that. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun because you get to meet different kinds of people. And you get to work on really cool ideas. You solve a problem, and maybe it's a sleep deprivation, but you get a high at the end of this when you pitch your idea that it's amazing. So very quickly, what happens at a hackathon? So again, for the 24 to 48 hours, what happens? So typically, people come and they pitch ideas. And then people form teams based on those ideas. If one particular idea draws you, then you go to that team. And then you have technical experts who would also talk about how to use a particular platform or technology during the hackathon. And then there's a lot of discussions. There's a lot of sharing of ideas, a lot of arguments sometimes. There's a lot of coffee, Red Bull, beer, ice cream, healthy snacks sometimes too, and a lot of coding and very little sleep. Did I say that? Very little sleep. But at the end of this, you get to pitch what you've built. Again, at the end of a hackathon comes a working application. You get to pitch this application in front of a jury of judges. And sometimes these judges are investors. So it's really cool. It's like, I'm bragging now with what I've just spent my 2 days on. And then sometimes there are prizes. Sometimes it's just bragging rights. Sometimes it's a t-shirt, a really cool t-shirt. And sometimes it's money. So again, these hackathons are pretty fun because of all of that. Now you're wondering, really? From idea to a working app in 24 to 48 hours. How is that possible? When you bring together the best minds and there's an open sharing of ideas and skills, the most incredible things happen. I have seen so many miracles at hackathons where it's the 11th hour and people haven't had any sleep, they're grumpy, they don't know what to build or what they've built is not working, and all of a sudden it just clicks. And then you see the most amazing demos on stage. And it's still a very powerful experience for me. So here are some of the examples of hackathons that are very popular. So I've kind of gotten some examples of hackathons that are sponsored by specific companies, and then hackathons are hosted or organized by very popular groups all over the world, I should say. So the one up there on the left, I guess, is NASA has challenged the Space Apps Hackathon, and it's 48 hours globally. And the last hackathon had 8,195 participants, and they produced 671 projects. The challenge is build something that would solve some of our space problems and some of our problems on Earth. And now they have millions of these projects, open source projects that people can use freely around space exploration, robotics, Earth viewing. So it's really, really cool. Now, Dreamforce is a hackathon, or is a conference that Salesforce actually puts out every year, and they have a hackathon in there. The last one, which I participated in, which was really a reconnaissance, because I worked for SAP, wanted to find out how they did this. They gave out $1 million, and they really did award the winners $1 million, and it became actually very controversial. One thing about hackathons that have big prizes, I've noticed that the participants stop talking. They stop talking because they're very afraid that somebody's going to steal their ideas. So it's not innovative anymore. It's not open anymore. So just watch for that. InnoGem at the bottom is the SAP hackathon that we've done, so that's very near and dear to my heart. And the other ones, TechCrunch Disrupt, that's every year too, around the TechCrunch conference in San Francisco. Their startup weekend, they organize hackathons everywhere. Angel Hack, the same thing. They also organize similar to Startup Weekend and Launch. One thing to note, the TechCrunch Disrupt Hackathon, for example, have you heard of GroupMe, a company that is about group chatting? It actually came out as a project from the TechCrunch Disrupt Hackathon in 2010. And in 2011, they were purchased by Salesforce for by Skype for $85 million. Think about that. So now, we've already done this. I wanted to do an exercise, but I don't think we're going to have time because you've introduced each other. But I think it's very important to understand that this event is very, very special because I don't know when all of you are going to get together again. So take advantage of this event and meet somebody you don't know. They could be your next creative partner, your next developer, your next co-founder. It could be your next investor. So reach out, shake somebody's hand, introduce yourself, and tell them why you're here. And you will be amazed at some of the things that you will discover in the next few days. So remember, the world needs your ideas. The world needs your ideas to come to life. But you cannot do it alone. And please do not make those ideas die inside of you. It's time for you to birth these ideas. Inspire others to work on it with you. Build it together and share it with the world. Remember that when people come together in a common cause, magic happens, miracles happen, and the extraordinary happens. So, I brought here with me some pixie dust, magical pixie dust from Silicon Valley. And what I want you to do is use this event to bring your idea to life.